Good morning, everyone. How are you? This is Cantor Gaston Bogomolni. I am broadcasting from Bethora Beni Rock campus. This is Conversations with the Clergy. Today we are going to talk about compassion related to the parasha of the week. We have a double parasha, Tazria Metzorah, and specifically about Tazria and about the Tzara'at, about the what is so-called the skin disease, so-called leprosy, um, and the midah, the salt rate of compassion. First of all, let's just we're in the middle of the day. It's for around 11 o'clock, and we ought to to take a break from the middle of the morning. So let's take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in. Exhale. One more time. And exhale. So now we can. It's a very, very interesting midah, compassion, sometimes related to loving kindness, related to empathy. And as you see in my pictures, something that seems so easy, but at the same time, not so easy. Because we are trying to get from this state, hopefully, to that state or sunny, shine state. But I like this picture because I was going to kind of put a different background. I was going to put a beautiful saying by the Dalai Lama, which is very famous, and it says the following. It says that love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. And and it's fine. I was going to have it there, as I like to have, trying to find a good background when I talk about when I will talk about during the conversations with the clergy. At the same time, this is very, very visual, which I think it's very important because look at this and look at that. This is almost like when you talk to a friend, and now that we are more and more connected around the world, and I talk to someone who is, in the middle. I'm living in Miami. We don't have real winter, and I have my kids who live in Boston. So when I talk to them in the middle of the winter, and they are really like cold, and I have no idea, I mean, like I can say, oh, okay, I understand it's cold there, but I cannot feel even if they're freezing. I wouldn't even be able to feel the I wouldn't be able to feel even if their thermostat is broken, and then there is no enough heat for them. And so because they're at the moment that they're telling me that they're freezing, might be actually warm. um this is no different than when someone is telling you, my day is sunny, sometimes cloudy, my day is thunderstorms, my head is all thunderstorms, it's raining, there is lightning. And the other one is, okay, I don't have lightning here. I understand maybe the idea of a little drops, but my day is mainly sunny, shiny. How can I actually identify with this? How can I actually myself identify and even empathize with this when I don't have that experience, especially at that moment? Maybe in your life you were like this sometimes, or we were like this, but maybe you were like this sometimes and you might not remember. But if it was a very important and poignant experience in your life, maybe you would have. So this whole idea of being empathetic, and to have compassion, to really feel for the other, it's a very important subject, and like Dalai Lama say, is a necessity, it's not a luxury. The only way that humans survive, that human society, humanity can survive, is we really can empathize and feel and have compassion. Not only just loving kindness, which is so important, because that's why Dalai Lama says love and compassion. So you might have love and everything, but then all of a sudden, the other person might be in a situation or a state, emotional state, or mental state or physical state that you can't really understand so well. There was a movie, there's this saying in English when you say, you have to put on someone's shoes, right? Like put in a situation of someone else. So literally, Adam Sandler took this idea of being in someone's shoes, and he created this movie about the shoe maker or the shoe repair, and remember the name of the movie. I think it's called like that, like a shoe repairer or something like that, or shoe fixer. I don't remember the name, but it's all about that. He's a guy from this era, right, and this society. And even though he has a shoe repair machine from his great grandparents, who came from Eastern Europe, and of course he's Jewish in the movie, he repairs shoes, and his machine breaks, right? It broke, and then he remembers that in his house he still have. He has this machine from his great grandparents, and then he goes and starts using it, and then he discovers that every time that he repairs a shoe, especially he repairs them, and he kind of he puts on someone else's shoes. He can feel. He looks at the mirror and he can feel how that person feels. He can see that person's life. He can feel and see and act like he would be that person. If you haven't seen that movie, it's just, it's a beautiful movie. It's amazing. And I think it's so good to really talk about compassion in that way. Easy to talk about compassion, difficult to be compassionate. And I want to reflect a little on that, based also on the book that I've been talking for all this probably part of the half part of the year, which is the Musar Torah commentary. And as I'm studying Musar, and taking these courses, I've been working on myself and on my soul traits a lot, and we work every 2 weeks. This is something that I'm not the only one can do it, and you don't have to be a Cantor, to do it. You can really go, to the Musar Institute and look for the courses that I have there for beginners, intermediate, or advanced, depends where you are. And I encourage you, even if you don't want to do the courses, at least, I encourage you to buy even any book from the Musar Institute. For example, a very famous one is Everyday Holiness. Let's see if you can see it there. There you go. Yes, this book. Sorry. Okay, which is by Alan Morinis, who is the founder of the Musar Institute. So, and you can read it, and it's not a book to read. These books are for exercising. There's books so that you understand. Every day you can work something. You journal. You do a lot of journal. You do some practices. There are some everyday things to do, and that's why I like to share with you all. So Rabbi Lisa Grushko, I just don't know how to pronounce it well. She writes about Tazria, and she shares that she sees in Tazria something to work on the soul trait, on the midah of mercy or compassion, called Rachamim. And that's so she shares a story of once that she was visiting a congregant, and the congregant was in the hospital, right? And then a resident, came into the room, sees the chart, and then he suggests, because they haven't had like a real diagnosis, the resident suggested that her illness was in her head. Then he moved into the next room. So Rabbi Lisa, shares, like in essence, the resident saw my congregant's file, but he did not see her. So that's kind of like that's kind of what's happening right here. And then she compares this with the story of Tazria. So she quotes from Leviticus 13:3, which is when a person who will have the skin disease, the tzara'at, will come to the priest, and then the explanation of the Torah is what is the task of the priest is, as to really approach, and how to detect and diagnose. So this is the quote from the Torah. The priest shall examine the affection on the skin of the body. If hair in the affected patch has turned white, and the affection appears to be deeper than the skin of the body, it is a leprous affection. When the priest sees, he shall pronounce the person impure. So there's a big connection here, right? That's what she was mentioning, that we cannot catch sometimes when we read the text, because as we have to have compassion for others and be able to look not only look at the chart of someone's, right? To look at the outside of someone, how it appears, how it seems to be, even if something that seems to bother us, about that person, anything that has to be about her personality or his personality, what he's trying to really approach here and what's trying to teach us is that in order to have compassion and empathy, you have to go beyond that. Interesting that in order to go beyond that, you need to have something we talked last week, which is patience. It's easy to go and diagnose, say, oh, this person is like this, like this, like that. We love to, kind of like define a person, by the external qualities. Lisa says that we usually do this because of we are in a rush, and but we want to diagnose, define, and then move on. Okay, right? Kind of like a little scanning, and then okay, and that's it. But we know very well that it requires, a lot of patience to really know someone and to understand someone's pain. Can you imagine you go to a therapist and the therapist, just diagnose you in 1 second, says you have this, and then you go, instead of really having like at least 10 sessions minimum or maximum, and understand and let the person talk and see if you can get to know that person better, to understand that person a little more. Sometimes we're on the rush and then a chick-chack, and then we just have a template. Okay, that person, and that's something that it's important to understand, because we are all unique. And even if science has told us that this is kind of like this, like this, like that, like this, like that, it is true. Behavior, in humanity, can be similar. However, that doesn't mean that you get to know the person. If you want to know or to get to know the person, you need to get a little deeper, hopefully deeper, and get into that person's soul to understand that person and to get to know that person. So here's what it seems to be suggesting here, that if we look really, really closely, that the word see, that you shall see, to look, to see, right? In this quote from the Parsha is presented twice. So it says, the priest shall examine the affection, right? And when it says, in Hebrew it says, Verra'a hakohen et hanega, right? Verra'a comes from re'eh, from lirot, from to see. And then at the end it says, Verra'ahu hakohen. Now, the first ra'a is this examination, kind of like, right? The priest shall examine is kind of like the first translation of ra'a. Although, to examine, you need to see. And the second time it says, Verra'ahu hakohen vetimeoto, right? And so this actually the word see is three times here. V'ra'a mar'eh is like it seems that, right? um, and or appears, like when you see something appears, the mar'eh, and then specifically it says v'ra'a v'dimeh oto. So it would define whether or pronounce, this person is impure or is pure. So the suggestion of Rabbi Grashko, is that when it says that the priest first it reacts like a doctor who examines you, and identifies something that is in the external, right? That's the first to see. This is the first time that he sees it. He says, okay, this is the microphone. This looks like that. Okay. Now the second one is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to really see what is really inside. So it's seeing the person in two different aspects. So she brings a quote here that I thought actually was worth to share, because this is the following. This is a quote from Rabbi Israel Joshua Trunk of Kutno from 1820. I mean, he was born in 1820, so the middle of 1800s. And he writes the following. It seems that there is a hint here that when one checks a person, one must not see only what they lack in the place of the affliction. Rather, one must see them in their entirety. You have to see the whole thing, including their elevated qualities. And so he writes now something maybe out of the blue, but let's see what he tries to say. And so Balak said to Bilam. Remember the story of the king Balak hires this witch, right, called Bilam, the wizard, who to curse the Jewish people. And he says the following quote: "You will see only a portion of them, the Israelites. You will not see all of them, and damned them, cursed them for me from there." And this is from the book of Numbers, if you remember the story of Balak. Therefore, the priest will see the affliction, will examine it, right, first. And after that, the priest will see now the person. What's going on? First, we'll see this shape, right? The shape of this person. I have no idea what's going on inside. That's the big thing. That's the big thing even in mental health, right? It's like someone says, I have a stomachache, and say, no, you don't have a stomachache. And say, what do you know? I mean, it's inside me, okay? So, right? Even to empathize with something that you cannot see. And that's why mental health is so important in so many different ways. Because you have to be able to empathize with these people who are telling you something you cannot really see. And unfortunately, most of us are trained that if we don't see, we don't believe, right? And what happens if the person is lying to me? He's probably making it up, so he wants to get something out of it. I mean, it's kind of, we are born in a way, we are not born, but we're nurtured in a society of not trusting, or in a society of always doubting. So the priest shall see this first, whatever he sees, right? And the outside, external, and then has to go and try to get this heaviness that is inside, that is affecting even the soul and the heart, and then probably and causing other of this of these physical reactions or affections. So what it says here, we should see them with all entirety. So what the rabbi is suggesting here is it's striking that Balak understands that Bilam can only curse the Israelites if he sees them partially. If he sees them in their entirety, if Bilam is able to really have the entire picture, meaning the outside and the inside, he will understand that they, like him, are three-dimensional human beings with their own stories and hopes and dreams. He will see that they, like him, want to live the day like him, want to be blessed, he will see that they are not so different. And that is so poignant and important, because that's what he's saying. Like, in order for you to be able to be judgmental, in order for us, in order for me, I take it on me, in order for me to not be judgmental, in order for me not to look at the differences, in order for me not to cause a rush diagnosis of someone, I need to look at someone partially. That's exactly what it's. That's exactly what it's saying here. We need to look for someone just partially. Otherwise, what it says in the text, that if you get to know the person and you can be able to see the three-dimensional person from outside, inside, on the back, on the whole thing, then the problem is that you will not be able to do it, because you really will start exercising compassion. And when you exercise compassion, immediately you exercise loving kindness. Remember that when we talk about now the Omer, and we talk about the 10 Sfirot, the 10 emanations and the points of energy in our body, and we talk about Kabbalah, the tree of life, we remember that the right was Chesed. We worked on the week of Chesed 2 weeks ago. Last week we worked on Gevurah, on the strictness, on the rigidness. Now we're working on Tiferet, right? The beautiful, the bountiful, and the splendor, and in order to look for this one, like many say, and some people debate about it, but you have the right and the love. You need to have a good balance of the compassion, the loving kindness, and then the rigidness, and cannot be all this and cannot be all this. It's because unbalanced. That's the whole idea of really looking for the center. In the center, look where it is. It's in the heart, right? That's where it is. That's where you feel a lot of the emotions. But if you can really find, a good balance here, you'll live probably as a beautiful person. You live with beautifulness, with beauty, and that's mainly what it's trying to say here. So compassion is it's not easy sometimes. We understand sometimes that the word rachamim comes from rechem. Rechem is the womb, right? The mother. Even when people ask why, when we pray for someone, we pray for misheverach, for cholim, for someone who is sick, who is ill, we usually say the first name in Hebrew, and it's a son or daughter of the mother, not the father. The reason is that there is a belief that rechem, which is the womb, and has the same similarity with the idea of rachem, of rachamim, of compassion. There is something there that will allow, God to have that, that quality of compassion into the person who is sick. So there's a lot about, really, I love reading about compassion, and it's not easy. I understand that it's not easy to be in someone's shoes, but if we exercise first savlanut, what we talked last week, patience, if we exercise the ability to listen to the person, to be able to listen. You see when the doctor, gives you, like, is testing you, and listening to the heart, right? So it's trying to listen carefully. And if he doesn't listen, cannot give you really like a diagnosis of that. So it has to go deeper on that. So it's not like, okay, the heart is okay. No, it goes and listen carefully. And that's part of the exercise we need to do when we try to have compassion. Patience, being able to listen attentively. We need to be able to listen. It's a lot about listening, right? Listening to answer. And this is all related to patience, as we talked last week. So to have compassion, before you give a diagnosis, before you just jump into conclusions. Yes, like for example, because then, look, anytime we do that, also we fall into another me that we need to work, which is arrogance, right? For example, there are people who said the following, because as when someone who is healthy and encounters, someone who is ill, the first instinct is often to distance oneself. So that's the opposite of compassion, to remind oneself that all of the differentiating factors, right, between ourselves and the person who is sick. In a way, we were doing this to protect ourselves, right? We are scared, actually. It could happen to us too. So there is some fear there in the middle. There's some fear hidden in the subconscious that we react that way. Instead of with compassion, we react with fear, like it could happen to us, right? When I divorced, people judged me all over the place. And I understood at the beginning. I was affected. I said, I mean, like, you're not in my shoes. How could you even say A or B? Based on what? And they could hear maybe the story of my former wife, and the mom of my kids, and they will say, okay, I empathize with that, but they never ask me my part, what I feel. So always trying to have the parts, but mainly I understood later that people were in fear that actually their marriages might be, oh wow, if it happens to them, it could happen also to me. That's kind of the Balak Bilam thing, right, that we talk. If you really look at the entirety, then you can actually see that you are more alike than you are different than. So, for example, the reactions you can hear all the time, or many times, is, oh, she has lung cancer. Oh, and then you jump into conclusions. She must have been a smoker. And then I knew he would end up in the hospital. He is so out of shape. Oh, it's so sad she lost her pregnancy. I wonder what she did wrong. We hear all the time these things, right? And the subtext, says Rabbi Lisa, is, I am different. I'll be okay. Because I'm different. I need to differentiate. I need to separate, to avdel, to do, a difference, a separation, between that person and myself. So when it comes to illness, usually that's mainly what motivates as well. So I would like to ask some questions that are written in this book. I think it's a good exercise for you, not to just to listen to me, but also to exercise. So if you have a pen and a pencil or a piece of paper, or you have a journal, a piece of napkin, anything that you have, or if you want to have it on your mind. So I ask you, what are the situations in which you notice that you have the least compassion? What are the situations in which you notice that you have the least compassion? Are there qualities in yourself from which you are trying to gain distance in these encounters? Another question. When have you experienced pity from others rather than compassion? And how might you use this experienced knowledge to approach others with compassion rather than pity? Remember, when you have pity, you're really falling into arrogance. You think you're better. So you have pity. Oh, for them. Oh, look at That's different than compassion, which is total empathy. So here's the practice suggested in the book. Identify an encounter in which you saw someone with the eyes of judgment and distanced yourself from the person. So any situation in your life, and challenge yourself to identify how much you have in common with this person. That's a challenge. Now try to use people first language. What does it mean? Right? You identify people as having an illness or disability, rather than being defined by it. This is very well used, like in the word of autism. It says this is a person with autism. This is an individual with autism. It's not autistic child, right? It's not an autistic person. So there's, even if there are some debates about people's first language versus identity first language, you know, and you might have like, okay, maybe he doesn't want to be called like that. Maybe he doesn't like to be referred like that. Then you just ask the person. You always ask the person how they would like or they want to be referred to, right? And then think through for your own identity. So, in essence, I think we have a good exercise to work on. Remember that a good exercise to really look at the world with compassion is to look like everything is light from God. And it's not sometimes so what you think it is and how you see with the first look of the priest, the diagnosis, right? That's what gets us into judgment, misjudgment, and then gossiping and believing that we are better than others, and we are so wrong. We are so wrong. Just look around. Look around with the eyes of three-dimension entirety. Remember that anyone can be in any situation. No one is exempted from anything in this world. Today you can have a lot of money and tomorrow you can lose the whole thing. Today you can be totally healthy and tomorrow, God forbid, you might develop something. Never judge someone else when you know that someone else can also be you. So when you need to help someone, try to get that machine of shoes and try to get in their situation, get in their shoes, and try to get from this to this. I would say that probably this is more difficult to understand, that one. And this one has a little light. Look how it represented the light, the sun, the shiny light, than this one. Although lightning, you're right. But you see, this one might have the more opportunities to help this one. But if this one judges this one, how do you think this head is going to look? How do you think this picture is going to look now? It might be a flood. And then you have to remove a lot of water. And you might not even be there to help remove the water. And if this person is cloudy and this person is flooded, this person might be reacting towards others. And then you ask why these shooters and why these things happen in the world. It's because people are like this. And they probably confronted many people like this. And they never were helped, understood, and they probably were judged and diagnosed on a rush. So whose responsibility sometimes is when we have murderers out there, people who are who we call that are bad, right? They might have been in this situation once or more than once, and this didn't change because this one didn't understand. Shabbat Shalom.